and they require a lot less water. The point is that at some point, you're going to have to, as with any thermal plant, you're going to have to remove the heat to get it back into the heat source to keep the cycle going. That's how we make electricity. Now, in a lot of social media posts, I see this quite often. What about the waste? That's like, that statement alone for many people is a convincing narrative as to why you should not even consider nuclear energy, because we don't have a solution for the waste. That's the philosophy behind that statement. And I think it's been said already, but I'll reiterate, even if we shut down every nuclear power plant in the world and never turned another one on, we still have to deal with these. So opposing a solution to these is exactly that. It's opposing a solution. And you can do that. You can say, I'm not going to support anything unless it's perfect, but then that becomes a different paradigm, allowing the perfect to become the enemy of the good. If you have a really good solution, you don't want to turn it down because it's not perfect. Otherwise, you're going to keep waiting for something that doesn't exist, perfection. And something to point out here is you can see these fences where the public, oh, you can't see on this one, you can see public access or public fence right there, but this is about the scale of them. You can see that they're about 10 meters high. I'm going to come back to that. That's an important point. These are about 10 meters high. Now, how they work into the whole picture is you've got these little uranium dioxide, these ceramic pellets. So that's what nuclear fuel looks like. It's a ceramic. It's a hard ceramic. And that goes into these straws, these metal straws, and they get bundled up together and they go into a nuclear power plant, and then they go into these storage casks. And here you can see another fence. And you can see they're quite safe, and they're actually passively cooled. So you see this little hole down here. It's going to vent up to the top, so that the way the cooling works is that the air just comes in, passively comes out the bottom, and it gets heated up on the inside, because it's inside there, and then it gets buoyancy lifted up and out, and it's just passively cooling itself. So the monitoring and maintenance on these is trivial. Basically making sure that there aren't any critters in there. You don't have any critters in there, and that these things have good flow. And then you just have an engineer walk through them, say once or twice a year, and look for any cracks, and then evaluate the structural integrity based on standard engineering good practices. And so they're quite passive and easy to maintain once you put them there. But they're massive. They're 10 meters high. This has got highly dense fuel, lots of concrete, metal in there. These require massive cranes and movers to move these. These are not easy to move. They're very difficult to do so. So how bad is this problem? Now there's a lot of different ways to cast this. If I was anti-nuclear, I would describe this in a way that made it sound horrifically scary and unsurmountable. But as a nuclear engineer, as a scientist, I prefer to say, how manageable is this? That's what is really of interest. Not, you don't want that. I think it would be inappropriate to describe a window as something that when it's broken, you could kill thousands of people. It's like, that's not a window for me. Yeah, okay, you could kill thousands of people with a broken window, I suppose, but you're not gonna. People aren't gonna line up for that. It's just not gonna happen. But I could spin it that way should I choose to do so. What I would prefer to say is, what is its use, what is its risk, and is the risk versus benefit acceptable? Yes, it is. I like windows, so I approve the use of windows, my personal opinion. When it comes to used nuclear fuel, you can talk about the 90,000 metric tons that are there. But let me contextualize those 90,000 metric tons of used nuclear fuel that are out there. For about 50 years, since the 1970s, for about 50 years, the United States has gotten about 20%, almost 20% of our electricity has come from nuclear energy for 50 years. The biggest economy on the planet, a manufacturing powerhouse, 20% of our electricity for 50 years. All the nuclear fuel from all of that energy would not fill up one single football field above that 10-meter height. All the spent nuclear fuel, we put those all in those casks, it would not fill up a single football field. Energy density. Remember that energy density I talked about? We're going to come back to that. That's because of energy density. It doesn't take a whole lot to get a whole lot. And that's what makes it attractive, is energy density. How scary are these things? These things are destructible. You can destroy these. But they've sent missiles against these things, they ran these things into trains, and they have came out unscathed, just with marks on the outside of it. If I want to get a license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to put used nuclear fuel in a cask, I have to take a final design, no changes. I take that final design, I do a finite element analysis on it, and I say, what is the weakest point on that cask? And I've got to drop it onto that weakest point from a 30-foot height. 30 foot up there, probably about the top of this building here, 30 foot up there, bam! And it can't leak. I have to take that exact same cask and I have to drop it 40 inches onto a steel bar. Again, weakest point, bam! And it can't leak. I take that exact same cask that hasn't leaked yet, and I've got to burn it at almost 1,500 degrees for half an hour. It's like a tunnel fire. And it still can't leak. I take that exact same cask, and now I have to submerge it 50 foot underwater for 8 hours, and it still can't leak. That just sounds crazy, you might think. But let me contextualize that for you. In the nuclear industry, we'll see this later, our basic design specification is that when we design a nuclear facility to be licensed by the NRC, the worst thing that can credibly happen is that nobody gets hurt. That sounds crazy, but that's the way that we do it in the nuclear industry. That's what the law states. Those are what the regulations state. And the same applies when I'm out on the road. If I'm out on the road and I have a license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to build a cask with used nuclear fuel, it's got to basically be able to roll off a cliff. Roll off a cliff, can't hurt anybody. Well, at least from the radiation, right? Industrial things are different. Those are handled under ocean. But for the radiological part, it's got to roll off a cliff, can't hurt anyone. It's got to fall on a spiky boulder, bam, can't hurt anyone. It's got to be in a tunnel fire. Whatever caused all this ruckus, it might have been a big natural gas, liquid natural gas tanker. It caught on fire in a tunnel, and you were in the tunnel with it. You got to sustain that, and you can't leak. And then maybe just fell in the lake. That's how they wanted to cool it off or whatever. Maybe that was the accident. Rolled off all this stuff, and then it fell into a lake. It's got to be under there, under 50 foot for 8 hours, and it can't leak. So, they are destructible, but they're virtually indestructible. The idea is that if you had a car that could do this, you're meeting that specification. You could be in any kind of an accident and basically be able to walk away without a scratch. Not going to be cheap. They're not going to be easy to build, but you can. You got to build them like this. You build it like this, stick this thing on wheels, and yeah, okay, you can start to talk about being able to survive those things. But these things, as I showed you earlier, they're massive. They are truly industrial massive. And so, my professional opinion, as an engineer, as a hum physicist, as a scientist, is I would much rather see an act of war or terror targeting these than an apartment building, or a cafe, or a school bus. Because those things kill. This will terrify people. You find out that this got targeted by a terrorist and these went rolling down the highway. My opinion is, yeah, that's going to scare a lot of people to find out one of these went rolling down the highway. But as long as you didn't get rolled over by it, the radiation's not going to hurt you. You're going to be scared, fine, I'll live with you being scared as long as you live. Because that's what will happen, is that as long as the explosion didn't get you, the radiation from these is going to be the last of your worries. So I used to work at this place. As you can see on the map here, it's in southeast New Mexico. There's a blow up in the site, and this is kind of a cutaway showing some of the stratigraphy, where you can see the mining infrastructure up above, and then the mined areas below. Now on the left, it's a funny picture. This is a miner. I was a certified miner when I worked there as well. Allowed me unrestricted access in the underground. But he's got a belly box. He's remote controlling this miner, and he's just mining the salt. Salt's easy to mine. This was sodium chloride, so it's very easy, and that's what the mine was. And so it made for easy mining and allowed you to have a very safe environment. Now on the right shows the stratigraphy, and so this whiter gray stuff is sodium chloride. The rest of this greener crosshatch stuff, that's going to be calcium sulfate, calcium carbonates. Basically, this is a mile thick of water evaporites from ancient water formations. A mile thick of salt. So this is what we call stable geology. The grain size of these things are about table salt up to about maybe the size of your thumb, the grains. And under massive lithostatic pressure, this stuff becomes elastoplastic. It will cocoon itself. If you walk away, this will heal itself, and it will just enclose whatever's there. And so this is what the National Academies of Sciences identified all the way back in the 50s as a really attractive way to dispose of nuclear waste that needs to literally be removed from the biosphere until it just decays down into a different kind of dirt. That's our design specification. So, like I said, I do a lot of research in this, so almost, if not all of this, is in my research and my publications. And here's an example of one of them. So, in 2016, I published a paper of what happened in 2014, where one of the drums, so this is on the left, shows you what it's like to place these drums in the whip. You see these 55-gallon drums up above, and then these 10-drum overpacks down below. And this is what it looks like when you're placing waste in the whip, in those panels, in those underground panels. And in 2014, on Valentine's Day, Los Alamos National Laboratory sent us a drum that, for all intents and purposes, just exploded. For all intents and purposes, it was a dirty bomb, a really, really effective one. It aerosolized about 7 curies of americium, transuranic radionuclide. Aerosolized, poof. And what was released as a result is this big green blob. Doesn't it look like The Simpsons? That looks like The Simpsons, doesn't it? Until you take it in context. That terrified people. This was all validated, this all got published, it was all peer-reviewed. The release that you see there, it was validated by these regulatory compliant air monitoring stations. It validated the modeling, and so we knew what the magnitudes were. When this occurred in 2014, the analysis and the measurement showed that the amount of americium that was deposited on the ground right there basically doubled the amount that was